Christ.
I want to tell you all a story of a king and a humble maiden. You see, the king, on his travels to and from his palace, would often pass through the various towns and villages of his kingdom, and his processions of great pomp and circumstance would always bring the townspeople to the side of the road where they could pay the king homage as he passed by. And on one of these occasions, a peasant woman in the crowd caught the eye of the king. He was melted by love for this humble maiden who lived in a poor village in his kingdom. And as time went on, anytime he passed through this particular village, he always looked for her, his heart captivated by love. He thought to himself, how can I declare my love for her? He was aware that being king usually always seemed to serve him well in life. But in this case, it almost seemed to tie his hands. If he brought her to the palace and crowned her head with jewels and adorned her body in royal robes, she surely would not resist. Or if he stopped one of his royal processions and came to her in the midst of all the pomp and circumstance and asked for her hand in marriage, she would have no choice but to say yes, because no one would dare say no to the king. But would she love him, was the question. The king did not want someone who had to say yes to him because of his status and his power. What the king desired was a lover, an equal. So he devised a plan to win her love. He hid his royal identity and disguised himself as a peasant. He snuck out from his palace every night, dressed as no more than a poor beggar, and sought her out, day in and day out. As time went on, he began to know her and she began to know him. And slowly, she fell in love with this man. And as their love grew, one day, he asked for her hand in marriage. Filled with love, she responded with a full and free yes. And then the king revealed his true identity to her. And of course, she was shocked at this revelation. How could this peasant man that she had come to know and love be the king all along? But even though she struggled with this revelation, what could not be denied was his love for her and her love for him. See, in order for this humble maiden to truly love the king, he had to hide his true identity. In a sense, he had to renounce his throne to declare his love to her and to win her love in return. Throughout these past weeks, as we have been reading through the Bread of Life discourse, we have seen how Jesus desires to give himself to us. And what he wants most of all is for us to receive him in love and for us to love him in return. The story of the humble maiden is ultimately each one of us. And the king is Jesus Christ, not the king of some small kingdom here on earth, but the king of the universe. And if Jesus were to appear to us right now and reveal himself in his full glory and ask for our love in return, how could we say no? No one could deny the king. But would that truly be love? What Jesus wants is our full and free response of love. And so, like the story of the king and the humble maiden, he disguises himself in the sacrament of the Eucharist, reducing himself to nothing more in our eyes than simple bread and wine. And he does this so that he can come to us day in and day out to declare his love to us and to win our love in return. And this is exactly what Christ tells us in the gospel. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. The Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. He is truly present in the most holy sacrament of the altar. But we cannot deny the fact that this revelation is hard to accept. How could this be that the King of the universe, Jesus Christ, comes before us appearing to our human senses as nothing more than bread and wine? If we're honest, this revelation might be too much for anyone to accept. But really, how could it be any other way? The King of the universe desires a lover, an equal. He desires our whole heart, just as he gives his whole heart to each and every one of us. And so, hidden under the form of bread and wine, he speaks to our heart every time we come to this altar and asks, "Will you love me?" And like the crowds in the gospel, we too may ask, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? How could this be true? But the answer to this question is not found in some well-reasoned solution or some persuasive argument. Rather, the answer to the question is given to us in today's psalm. Taste and see the goodness of the Lord. How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Taste and see. Taste and see for yourself that what Jesus Christ says to us is true. At the end of the day, we don't believe it simply because everyone else around us does. We don't believe it simply because the church says that it's true. We believe it because when we receive the Eucharist with an open heart and we taste and see the goodness of the Lord, we discover in faith that what he says is true, that the bread that he gives is indeed his flesh for the life of the world. And this should be our prayer each and every time we come to receive the Lord in the Eucharist, that our hearts may be opened to tasting and seeing his goodness. And so I ask the question to all of us, are our hearts open to encountering Jesus Christ, the King of the universe, who humbles himself to be hidden in the Eucharist? Are we open to encountering Jesus Christ, who disguises himself under the form of bread and wine so that he may win our love? Not through a great show of power or through pomp and circumstance, but by simply coming to us day in and day out here at the altar. Brothers and sisters, we have a hidden King, a King who comes to us hidden in the form of bread and wine. And if we're honest with ourselves, we may struggle with this truth. The words from the gospel may echo in our own hearts. How can this man give us his flesh to eat? How can this be true? Even in that place of doubt, let the words of the psalm guide us. Taste and see the goodness of the Lord. Discover for yourself that it is Jesus Christ who has been knocking on the door of your heart all along, asking you the simple question, will you love me? Come to the altar today with an open heart to receive our hidden King, a King who in his great humility renounces his glory and majesty by coming to us in the form of bread and wine, so that he may declare his love to us and to win our love in return.